Hello, everybody. It's me, Kenneth, and we are here today with Alexander Marchand. Alex is the author, well, the artist behind The Universe is a Dream, and also a lesser known comic known as Dissolving Dollars, which is about economics and finance. Actually, very, very relevant topic today in this environment that we're living in. And actually, today, we're going to be talking a little bit about economics and finance because there is a common thread between both of us with this theme, and I don't think that's a coincidence either. First of all, Alex, hi and welcome.
Hi.
So what have you been up to?
Well, okay. I'll give you the basic story of what I've been up to. Of course, okay, I came out with The Universe is a Dream book, and I was going to do a sequel to that, okay? And I worked on that on and off for like a year or so. And in doing that, I was trying to cram a lot of stuff into one, comic book. And I decided that, well, it'd be better to just split this up into several books, topic specific, which basically takes things like, very everyday, normal things that we have to deal with, and then bringing it back to, the psychology of A Course in Miracles. And so when I have just one of those books done, I don't know, it might be another year or something, because I've been working on all of them, kind of whatever interests me at any given moment. So, but that's what I'm more books are coming, more comic books on specific subjects about forgiveness and all that. So, and the other thing I've been working on, and this has taken a while because, I just flip back and forth between projects so much, but I've been making some paintings basically of the symbols in my book and stuff like that. And I'm going to basically, I'm making prototype paintings that I'm going to offer if anyone is interested in commissioning me to make one for them. And the first one I've done, I got right here. And let's see here.
Wow, it's big, huh?
Yeah, it's, and so this, this is exactly what I'd send anyone who ordered this particular painting. It's called The Miracle of Awakening, and I have this this custom-made frame too.
That is cool.
It has the symbols, like the miracle symbol for my book here, and so this graphic represents the splits, which is something that's not technically in A Course in Miracles. You can tease it out. It's something that Ken Wapnick, formulated, and I think it's a very valuable thing. It makes everything linear, so you can just map it out in your mind properly. And this takes the splits and does them in reverse. So you start down here in the universe, and the holy relationship.
Could you just hold it up a little bit?
Okay.
Let's see the bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And okay, so we got the eyeballs looking up. So we're undoing the projection, and
those half hearts. That's special love, isn't it?
Yeah,
special love and special hate.
Yeah, love and hate. And okay, so we forgive that. We melt the unconscious guilt represented by the iceberg. So we got the eyeballs looking up.
What is that the radiator thingy? What is that?
Oh, this is projection. We're projecting the guilt to make the universe down here. Okay.
Oh, wow.
So, okay, and then right here we have the holy instant. So we got fear, guilt, sin, the time. So, okay, we're leaving time here, going up to the original, choice between the ego and Holy Spirit. We're choosing the Holy Spirit again, undoing that. And then on the top, we got the miracle symbol. And then we got the God symbol and the mind symbol, and this represents, the awakened mind. Okay.
Wow.
So that's, stuff like that. I've got other ideas. This is kind of going to be like a mid-range painting or a mid-range price.
And the dreams. Sorry to go back. One other thing I wanted to point out is that there were dreams within dreams.
Oh yeah,
Is that part of the?
So if we look at it in reverse, we got the first split, second split. We're getting deeper and deeper into insanity, basically. And then you look at it in reverse, that's awakening, and I have not sealed it into the frame yet.
That's cool.
So
sorry, I interrupted you. Go on.
So I'm into art. I would own a lot of art as like investment purposes because it's a finite asset that tends to appreciate with inflation.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I don't because I don't really like own a house. I'm not really settled down or anything. So, but art is one of the best investments you can make, really. And
why don't we talk a little bit about what's going on in the economy right now? I mean, obviously we're talking about investments with a purpose,
right? So I mean, like you and I, we're both basically gold bugs. We understand the
rational
current
people.
economic.
I prefer the term rational person.
Yeah, right. Yeah, well, we understand the economic situation enough that we know that paper currencies are in jeopardy and they're being inflated away. Their value is being, just like last week on your birthday, Uncle Ben Bernanke gave you a great present where he
gave me a leg up. Thanks, Bernanke.
Unlimited, basically open-ended money printing is basically what he announced. He's that's it. Don't worry about us announcing more. We're doing it,
Yeah.
So that's the situation, and you and I buy gold, and I buy more silver. You buy more gold.
Oh, are you more silver than gold?
Yeah, okay. It feels better when you're holding pounds of silver, and that's your life savings, rather than ounces of gold.
It's true. Silver is more practical.
Yeah,
you can buy bread with silver. You can't buy bread with gold.
Right. Yeah. So the thing about like our whole economic situation is that unfortunately in this world, economics is basically a religion. It's more ideological. There's different agendas that take the form of like, this is a science, the science of economics. There's really no science of economics in the modern world because it's sort of like there wouldn't be a science of physics if the laws of physics were at the whim of legislators. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
So there's really no economic science because the laws are constantly changing. It's like if you wanted to send a rocket to Mars and you couldn't rely on what's the force of gravity going to be, a month from now. You couldn't do it. So there's really no science of economics. It's just a bunch of people with agendas just saying, oh, this is what we need to do, and from the political standpoint and corporations, they all have an agenda to basically use the system to bail themselves out. That's what's going on.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to say something about that. And it's a great point because, I studied A-level economics. And, when I was studying it, you're presented with the Keynesian versus monetarist debate, right? Which is very much like a Republican versus a Democrat kind of thing in politics, whereas there is this illusion of choice.
Yeah.
But you have to realize that the spectrum is really a lot broader than just left-wing or right-wing or monetarist or Keynesian. There's so many different schools of economic thought out there. For instance, the von Mises school, the Austrian School of Economics, which I respect tremendously. And obviously all of this is just it's actually a very sophisticated method of what Noam Chomsky called manufacturing consent. You're giving the public the illusion of choice, and so you keep them running around in this circle so they don't know what's going on.
Yep. So I mean, like, when I think about economics, I think, well, if you really wanted to know what pure economics would be, it would be basically you would have to not have a government. You'd have to basically have a completely free market system, and then you could call it a science at that point. I mean, people often ask me what my own political views are, and I always quote Henry David Thoreau from his essay on civil disobedience, where he says, that government is best which governs not at all, and when men are prepared for it, that is the kind of government they will have. And so, I mean, the thing about government is that it violates two fundamental moral axioms that every civilized human being just takes for granted in their day-to-day lives.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is non-aggression. And you know the non-aggression principle. You cannot initiate force against your fellow humans. I mean, every sane human being lives with that principle, okay, in their day-to-day life. And the second thing that government violates is property rights. We own our bodies. You got to start from that premise. And we own the fruits of our labors, basically. We own the consequences of our actions, and government violates those all the time. Government is essentially a monopoly on the initiation of force.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that's what it is, and it's never formulated like that. So, but that's really what it is. And
well, maybe I just share my thoughts here.
Okay.
And I definitely agree with that. But I think I'm actually going to zoom out here and say that I think that government is a collective projection, obviously, of who we are.
Yeah.
Right. I was watching Kymatica, and this is one of the central themes in the show is that the system of government evolves with humanity's development. So, there is this spectrum of anarchy and dictatorship. So, one is zero control, zero external control, which is the collective ego, and one of total control. So, as humanity evolves, it moves from one stage to the other. Now, the question is whether or not humanity is spiritually developed enough to maintain that system. So, what we are seeing now in our current environment, and most notably that of the United States, is in many ways like Rome. And I wrote a little bit about something in my blog, and that's because Rome used to be a republic, and a republic is a group of people that's elected by the people to govern the people. And what we have now in the States is not really a democracy. It may look like a democracy, but it's not. It's more of a republic, and it's an oligarchy. Actually, it's made by obviously the people, the powers that be. And so right now we're going to see a shift from a republican system to a purely democratic system, in my opinion. And this coincides with the spiritual evolution of humankind.
Yeah, I mean, like a pure democracy is now very, very much due to the internet. It should be just a no-brainer. So, I mean, at least in a pure democracy, the people get the government they deserve, So you can't say, I mean, a victim of the collective. You could say, you can identify yourself as that, but the people, at least they're getting exactly what they deserve. And so, yeah, I mean, definitely the government represents the collective psychology of any group of people. So like, I mean, for instance, like, okay, I definitely, am looking beyond, I don't see a world in my lifetime where people have become so enlightened that they don't need government anymore, or they don't want government, that they totally understood the moral argument against government, and they said, okay, we need a completely voluntary society. Now, I know that's not going to happen in my lifetime, but I'm going to talk about it and spread these ideas when I can, because they're basic, logical, moral stuff that people usually don't think about, because we're basically just brainwashed in our government world that this is the only way it is. So, like I take this position of that, ideally we would have a completely voluntary world without government. And so, normally someone would say, oh no, we can't have that. We need government for roads and for security, and or those greedy corporations, they'll just take over without government. Okay, so I mean, these are all not really valid arguments, because and I can definitely counteract them, but so basically, when you say this, these are the kind of arguments people come up with, and when you get them really annoyed, they'll say, well, if you don't like government, why don't you just move to Somalia? I hear things are going really well over there. And so, it's not a valid argument, because Somalia, okay, yeah, it does not have government, but, it wasn't like a voluntary thing. Its government basically blew up. And really, Somalia is similar to the surrounding countries still, even without government. Somalia is the same with the surrounding countries with government. So it's really not, it's in the psychology. So like, if you say, oh yeah, move to Somalia if you don't like government, it's like saying, okay, say you're an atheist and you say, there's this city where all the churches were burned down. So if you're an atheist, you should go move to that city because all the churches were burned down. Well, burning down churches doesn't make everybody an atheist, and getting rid of the government doesn't make everyone adhere to the basic ideas of voluntary society, of non-aggression, and basic property rights. So you definitely need the human mind to evolve into that state. It's a society that really, really is logically consistent morally, where they say the initiation of force is definitely not right. And so, like, the way you know that this argument is pretty much foolproof and at its core it is morally, right, is that say you're having an argument with someone and they say, well, the government needs to do this or the government needs to do that, whatever it is. I don't care if it's, something like a war, or if it's some grand charity thing where they want to, raise taxes so they can do this charitable thing. Regardless of what it is, basically what they're saying is we want to use the monopoly on the initiation of force that is government so we can do whatever this is. And so, I would just say to that person, do you support the initiation of violence against me simply for disagreeing with you? Because that's all I'm doing by saying that government shouldn't do this stuff, that it should all be voluntary. And if the person, a normal person say, well, yeah, if you put it that way, I see what you mean. But if a person says, oh no, definitely we need government, the initiation of force is okay. Well, by doing that, that person has set up their own demise, basically, because they're saying, hey, you're free to initiate force on me, just as I'm free to initiate force on you. See, that's the real anarchy in the negative sense that people often use the word. It's not civil. But that's basically everybody who says the government needs to do this or that. That's what they're saying. They're saying it's okay to use force on people to get what I think is right. So that's the whole problem with this world.
So let's bring it back to the ACIM perspective.
Yeah.
And obviously those watching out there will say, yeah, if you're an ACIM student, then obviously you're making it very real if you think that the government is real and if you think that the government can actually hurt you. And obviously the government is an extension of yourself. So what is the appropriate action or response here?
Yeah, well, in my life, I just don't take the government very seriously. I'm not too worried about it. Instead of worrying about voting, which I've never done, and I don't really care to do so either, because my vote is for no government, and if no one voted, then we would have no government. But that's not going to happen until people are ready for it, so I'm not worried about it. But I just take evasive actions. But anyway, so to relate this back to A Course in Miracles, is like the non-aggression principle. Okay, well, the non-aggression principle is very basically like the most basic form of forgiveness. You're just basically being civil with your fellow humans. You're not initiating force on your fellow humans. And if you apply the non-aggression principle mentally, then that's essentially, that's what forgiveness is. So when you initiate force mentally, it's basically judgment. That's what judgment is. And so the non-aggression principle applies to the physical world and the mental world. When we're talking about forgiveness, we're kind of doing the same thing either way. So when the mind is ready for it, the world will reflect that. So, and I'm not worried about the world catching up. I'm just doing it myself.
See, I must make a comment here and say that from my opinion, it's really, of course, we gotta separate what happens in the world and what happens in our minds. And if we maintain a forgiving state of mind, no matter what happens in our actions, it's going to be a loving response.
Yeah.
So
right.
and here it's also careful we have to make a distinction that although for the most part, in the vast majority of cases, non-aggression is the appropriate action. But there are times where aggression is the appropriate action. For instance, like if you've got a bear running at you, you're going to have to shoot it. So, obviously...
Yeah, I don't call that aggression, though. I call that accidental aggression. Okay. It's like you're in a catch-22 situation. That's fine. Obviously. So... you really don't have to worry about stuff like that. Yeah, so, let's, okay, there's a few other interesting things along this line that we could cover. Before, I want to talk more about economics, but there's a few things about government that people need to understand in relation to economics. And so, when I tell somebody that ideally we don't need government, okay, they'll come up with arguments like, okay, who will we need protection from bad people, bad countries, stuff like that. Well, there is really no war in any large scale if you don't have a government, because what war is basically is it's one tax farm is basically what is taking over another tax farm. They want that pre-existing system and just take it over. If you go to try to invade a place where there's no organized system that you can just take over, where it's all individuals acting, in their own best interest, good luck. You just need so much power, so much manpower to and it would be so bloody. It would be no one. You would have to be completely insane to even try it. And then when you did try it, it would completely fail. So I mean, that's nothing to worry about, really. Other things like corporations would take over the world. Well, this is something that really bothers me because the corporation doesn't exist except in the world of government. Government makes the corporation. The corporation is a legal fiction. It's a legal fiction whereby individuals get to keep the profits of a business while the fictional corporation absorbs all the liability and losses. So if a company goes bankrupt and you're the CEO, you don't have to go back and repay all those paychecks you got over the years. You just say, oh, okay, I got to go find a new job. We went bankrupt. It's like the ability to basically rob a bank with a sock puppet on your hand and throw the sock puppet in jail, and you're fine. I mean, that's what the corporation is. And the government allows the corporation because if they didn't, businesses would know, hey, we don't need the government. We can do all this stuff you do, and we can do it better, and we can do it for a profit. And, we don't need all this money, all this corporate money would not go to supporting any political parties or anything like that. So that's what people need to understand about the corporation.
Well, and arguably in that fictitious legal governmental world, corporations already rule the world. We think that governments are a force, but really everything is already corporate owned. It's just a fact.
Yeah, and it's just natural. I mean, if there's a monopoly on force, if there's a gun in the room, and you can make money using that gun, you're going to do it, because if you don't, your competitor will. And so it just sets up this loop. Like for example, America arguably started out as the smallest government, most free country ever. Okay, just in theory. I mean, it was free. It was an extremely free country if you were a white landowner anyway. Okay, for other people, not so free. But it created this system for creating large amounts of wealth due to that freedom. And that wealth led to the growth of government, because the government wanted to get in on that money, and that money wanted to get on that government power. So even if you tried to say, oh, we just need a small government, a minimal government, it's just over time, it's just going to grow back to what you started with and tried to get rid of. So, it's just stuff like this. And like pollution, for instance. Pollution is a property rights issue. A corporation can pollute because the individuals in that corporation aren't on the hook if they screw up and do too much pollution. But in a free world where you can have these artificial things as corporations, then people would have to be very careful, because you're not allowed to socialize pollution, basically. You have to contain it, and we'd pay for that in all our products. It would be a solution to pollution, not the government. So, I mean, just ideas like these, for the normal person, I'm like, this is like blasphemy, political blasphemy, but it's really quite logical. So,
well, anyway, whatever you just said there is actually, it takes a fair amount of intelligence to understand that in the first place. So, I think, yeah.
Yeah, so of course, okay, another thing I should mention is that, well, what would a government-free world look like? I mean, it would be a world of rules without rulers. And so there would be like, if you wanted to participate in the economy, you'd probably have to belong to some sort of like dispute resolution organization. It would be of your own choice, and you'd pay a fee to belong to this, and it would have your back, basically, in case you initiated force, if you violated other people's property rights, these organizations would exist to, resolve disputes, basically. And ostracizing would be the main way, the feedback mechanism that would keep people, being civilized. So, I mean, that's basically how a free world would be. Something like that. And the whole point is that government, it says that the whole idea of government, it says, well, we know the solution and we're going to impose it on you. In a free world, it's like, hey, we don't know the solution. Hey, how about all you individuals try out what you think is the best, and what is the best will prosper, basically. So that's how you figure out what works the best. And that's going back to the whole economics issue. To find out what works, you need to have an economic world where the rules are fixed, and you're free to, test economics any way you want within the rules of economics, the basic rules of non-aggression and basic property rights. Okay, so let's talk about economics more, because we have a economy that is basically built on debt. Okay, now debt is a very interesting idea, because, especially in relation to A Course in Miracles, because debt is basically like guilt. Okay, so if you want to pay back debt, in a worldly sense, that's kind of like self-forgiveness. You're taking the initiative to face this debt, face this unconscious guilt is basically what this debt is, and you're paying it off, you're facing it. And there's also the lender could call off the debt and forgive it too. That's called debt forgiveness. So in the big picture,
and debt doesn't exist. It only exists in people's minds.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So like in this world, our debt is imaginary. Our debt to God is imaginary, because basically we feel like we borrow, or more appropriately stole, the creative power to create something seemingly separate from God, from oneness. Mm-hmm. And we think we owe that debt back and we can't repay it. And so we're afraid of God. And but of course, God doesn't. This isn't a debt. It's not real. So like when the government does all these bailouts, when it uses inflation to pay off bad debts and stuff like this, all this is really basically like guilt projection. It's, instead of facing up, paying back your bad debts or your debts, you're projecting it. You're saying, okay, we're going to use inflation to steal the money of savers. We're going to inflation to steal the money of savers to pay off this debt, or we're going to use taxpayer money to bail out this debt. And so there's this parallel here where you can see the psychology being reflected in our economy.
Right.
And
also debt makes time very real.
Yeah, right.
Right, mm-hmm. Because time, interest, compounding mm-hmm. interest, you get and the most, obviously, something worth talking about here is a debt trap. There can be, actually, this is the most bizarre of situations that you can get yourself into, that it's possible for you to get in a state like where the United States is, where they have a debt that is so huge and they're paying interest at so much that there is no way that they can repay it. Yeah. It just keeps getting deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper mm-hmm. until it just fails completely.
Yeah. And that's the collective guilt, represented in the form of a national debt. The national debt could never be paid off because it represents the base money supply of our debt system. Because all money, well, it's not even money. and it's currency. It's just currency. Real money you cannot just create out of thin air. Real money is things like gold and silver. But in our currency system, all money is created as debt. The more debt, the more money in circulation. And so, if the United States paid back all its debt, that'd be major deflation. That would totally suck. I mean, it would be good on one level because it would be good for savers, but it'd be horrible for people in debt because the purchasing power of the currency would rise as they paid down that debt because it would remove the number of dollars in circulation. But that's not going to happen. So you don't have to even worry about it.
It's great.
So, okay. I mean, okay, we're talking about a lot of stuff that's loosely related to A Course in Miracles. And I'm definitely working on books that directly relates all this stuff to A Course in Miracles. It's kind of hard to keep it all in my mind.
Of course, I just want to say here that it's all about forgiveness.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, there's one thing that we, obviously this video has many themes and many points of view which are arguably subjective, right? They are those of Alex's and of mine. But, the central theme that we both want to flesh out here is applying, forgiveness to the real world. And obviously the real world has a relevance because, this is where we are. And this is how the illusion plays out as a manifestation of our collective consciousness. So it is very relevant, and all the themes that we're talking about here, the debt, the wars that have been going on in humanity, that's part of you, right? That's all part of us. We have to fix it, in a sense, both internally and externally by doing our part.
Yeah, I mean, I personally love gloom and doom. It's not a normal thing.
Is that why you have the dark background?
Maybe. But the thing I like about doom and gloom is that it essentially represents facing the guilt, facing the demons, facing the stuff that the average person is afraid of and they deny. If you just faced up the facts of the reality of the economic situation, what is possible, there is a slight possibility that there's some sort of factor that could bail everyone out and there'd be minimal pain. I don't believe it. I've put my savings into gold and silver because I don't want it inflated away. And by facing that doom and gloom, I have that knowledge. And I'm not afraid of it. It doesn't scare me either way. I don't care. I've hedged myself. So facing that doom and gloom, that's a form of forgiveness.
Actually, I just want to talk about gold a little bit here.
Yeah.
Because I haven't been saying anything about gold, and I actually I want to reframe that ultimately money is the human spirit. Yeah. That's what real. Okay, let's stop talking about money and let's stop talking about currency because these are just mediums, right? You can use computer mice or shells or whatever or pens to act as currency.
Yeah.
But what are we really trading here between you and me? A conversation. It's human value, isn't it?
Right.
It's human impetus. Now that is real wealth, and obviously that relates to the spiritual principle that we are abundant, just doing nothing. That's what the Course is telling us. We are worthy. God gave us our worthiness. Period. There's nothing to talk about.
Yeah.
So, but in the current situation that we're in, gold and silver is a great place to put your wealth in the world of form because it represents a step up from what we think is money now, which is just paper. Governments cannot print gold. And, I do believe there will come a stage where humanity on planet Earth, we will stop using money. But, God knows when that will come. That might take 500 years. And also, I want to say that I do think that the price of gold is going to spike up and then it's going to spike down. So, like, it's not blind advice that we're giving here.
Yeah,
Like, you
right.
have to know when to sell as well. You have to know when to get out of the market. Because I do believe, from my research, that the amount of gold that is publicly announced in the world today, which is about, 150,000 tons, about the size of a football stadium or whatever, or cube or whatever, that amount is actually a lot less than what actually exists out in the real world, which
Right.
is could be as much as 10 times as much. It's just not announced.
Hmm.
But when that is announced, like, things are going to be obviously very different, and obviously, it's supply and demand. The price of gold is going to come crashing down as well. So, like, we have to be careful, we have to be informed. But in the current situation that we're in, holding gold is a good idea. That's my
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah. I mean, like, okay, in Disappearance of the Universe, where Artner Persa mentions that you can expect the Dow to reach 100,000 by 2050. I remember reading that and I said, oh, okay, 100,000 what? Uh, if an ounce of gold is $30,000 an ounce and the Dow is 100,000 and a loaf of bread is $30, then nothing happened. you know. So that's why you have to always watch out for inflation, because like if you look at a chart of the Dow Jones Industrial Average from the Great Depression, so 1930s about until present, and you measure it against the price of gold, the Dow actually has gone nowhere in all that time, in 80 years. And so, I mean, you would have been better off in stocks because they pay dividends, but uh, I mean, all this stuff just basically keeps up with inflation. Our whole idea of that the economy should grow, that there should be rising prices, growth, that's all based on inflation.
Alex, do you want
That
to do you want to talk a little bit about how you buy your silver and gold? I mean, just practical stuff for people.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I I order it online. I mean, there's a few big vendors. Um, I mean, I don't really like putting at the current stage. I don't really like putting much money into paper gold, like in the markets, like SLV, GLD, those kinds of things. Just because you never know if you're hedging against potential disaster, it wouldn't make sense to put it right in the middle of the fire, so to speak. You basically want to have it in your own possession, or at least overseas in a bullion vault or something like that.
Could you
So I
tell
mean
us?
that.
Could you tell us why it's important to keep it overseas?
Oh well, because historically, when governments are in trouble, they are going to go for any low hanging fruit they can find, and that is anybody they know of who has gold or silver. I mean,
Which
I don't think
happened in,
it's,
in history.
yeah, it happened. Roosevelt did it. Confiscated gold. Anybody who was smart didn't hand it in, of course, but a lot of people did, and they devalued the dollar. Basically overnight. Gold went from being pegged at $20 an ounce to $33 an ounce the next morning, basically. So anybody who handed in their gold and put their money in dollars just lost a nice big percentage of their purchasing power. And the whole idea of the Great Depression is an interesting topic, because the myth is that the Great Depression is a shining example of how we need the government to save us from economic realities, to save us from taking economic medicine, because when you overextend, somebody's got to lose and pay for that overextension, that malinvestment. And so in the United States during the Great Depression, it was so great precisely because the government kept on doing it. It was unprecedented. the government involvement with the economy, that had never been done before, and yet it was the longest depression. It's called the Great Depression.
Mm-hmm.
And what is cause and effect there? Is it because it really was the greatest depression, or did it turn into the Great Depression because the government just kept on meddling, not letting it heal itself? There was a greater depression in 1920 that no one ever talks about, except people like me who want to, call into question the policies of the Great Depression. But in 1920, there was a bad depression. The economic numbers started out worse than in the Great Depression. And President Wilson had a stroke. And so he really didn't want to do anything. And nothing happened. And within several months, the economy healed itself. It was bad for several months, but the economy healed itself, and that ushered in the Roaring '20s. And so, I mean, that's an example of do nothing, get the pain over quick, and then you're healed. But see, that goes back into this denial. We don't want to face the unconscious guilt. We don't want to face the stuff we believe we did, our guilt of these excesses. We don't want to face them. We want to slowly inflate them away. Don't take the pain, stuff like that.
Yeah. Actually, I just want to say here that I too have my own theories about what happened during this period. And it's actually a huge story, and I won't talk about it here because obviously, it would take a lot longer to explain. But if you're interested, do watch The Money Masters.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's a very good documentary. So start with that, and I actually might talk about it in another video. Yeah.
Yep.
Which okay, let me just give you a little, the people who are listening. And okay, my theory in short is that the Great Depression was manufactured not by the government, but by the Federal Reserve itself. And prior to this, this was tremendously planned by the powers, the small few families who did own a lot of America at the time, which are the Morgans and the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds of the European lineage. And this very much coincides with as well the formation of the Federal Reserve. The Great Depression and the formation of the Federal Reserve, the Third Federal Reserve, that's not coincidental. I also do think there was a great amnesia that took place, as you're saying, because surrounding the events that took place during this time period in American history, right? We hear very little about how Abraham Lincoln fought, like crazy to stop these bankers from issuing money, how the first and second Federal Reserve was shut down by I think it was Andrew Jackson.
Jackson, yeah.
Andrew Jackson was a U.S. president that's not talked about at all, for good reason, because he was the biggest opponent to the bankers at the time. So do watch The Money Masters. It's a great documentary.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah. The Federal Reserve. It's owned by. It's not a conspiracy. It's owned by banks. It's owned by the biggest private banks. It's this weird thing where the government allowed it to create the nation's currency, and it's really a private organization that just simply gets.
Right.
It's just simply allowed by the government.
Right. It's not federal, and there are no reserves.
Yeah. Right.
It's a complete misnomer.
Mm-hmm. And so, I think more people are waking up to the realities of the Federal Reserve, at least.
Yeah.
Right here, I have a silver dime. Okay, this is from.
Hey, hold on! I want to get my gold.
This is from 1941.
1 second.
Okay. Well, anyway, I'll just talk to myself then.
This is awesome. Right.
Okay. Yeah,
That's a
nice.
gold
Okay.
sovereign.
I have a half an ounce of gold on hand.
Yeah.
This is a Mexican half ounce. Nice. Okay, well, anything. I was going to tell a story about this little silver dime, okay? This is from 1941, back when money was still made out of real valuable metal, where its face value was supposed to be related to metallic metal value.
Mm-hmm.
And throughout history, our 20th century, one of these silver dimes, between one or two of these silver dimes, you could buy a gallon of gas. If it's below one of these dimes, then gas was cheap. And if it's above two of these dimes, gas is expensive. Well, I can still buy a gallon of gas with one or probably about 1.5 of these dimes right now. So, I mean, that just goes to show that people think the price of gas is going up. It's not. It's just inflation. Oil is also an interesting topic because it seems to me like right now what's going on economically is there's a kind of a currency war going on between Eastern powers, mostly China, and the old Western established wealth. The petrodollar is the US dollar, but that's slowly going away, and China is making it happen. I mean, there's been, just in the last year, China's been, it doesn't make like the news in the United States and stuff, but China wants to use the yuan, the RMB, to trade oil. Get rid of you don't have to trade oil and dollars anymore. And the fact that internationally people had to get a hold of dollars to buy oil has kept the dollar artificially valuable for a long time. And so if this currency war, if the Eastern powers, mostly China, win this, I mean, the dollar could be greatly devalued, and also like the euro too, but mostly the dollar. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, we don't really know what. There's definitely agendas, and there are people who have more money and more power have agendas, and their agendas are more likely to be the ones that come to pass. And so I think it's possible that the Chinese want to basically back their currency with gold because they've been buying tons of it.
Yeah, they've been buying tons of it.
And they want that to be the new international standard for a currency, their own. And I mean, if that does happen, I mean, the U.S. is gonna, have some problems for a while.
Right. Which.
But I think all this could get, figured out within the next few years. I don't think it's necessarily a long-term problem.
Yeah, I do think things are going to shift really quickly, actually. And I just wanted to say that I mean, obviously this happened before in history, didn't it? With the United States putting its currency on the gold standard. I can't remember. Was it after World War II?
Bretton Woods,
right. Mm-hmm. And at that time, there was this mad race for like beggar thy neighbor. They call it beggar thy neighbor policy, where everybody was just devaluing their currency like crazy. So along came the United States, which said, look, our dollar is worth something, and that made it stand out from all the rest of the other currencies, and thus the US dollar became the de facto currency of the world until a particular time where they came off the gold standard on
1971,
right? And that this is actually very significant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, from Bretton Woods after World War II, we were on a sort of like an international gold standard. Within the United States, people couldn't exchange their money for gold, but internationally they could. And due to the and internationally they weren't accepting dollars; they wanted the gold, and so the United States is losing a lot of its gold reserves, maybe all of them, for all we know. And so in 1971, Nixon closed the gold window. I think it was August 15th. And ever since, the world has been on a completely paper currency system. And throughout history, a paper currency lasts around an average of about 30 years.
Yeah.
So it's due to have some problem.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add another comment there, which people might like to go investigate, is that the backing of the dollar with Bretton Woods, that gold, from my understanding, came from World War II. And this is again another story which the vast majority of people do not know about, and that was the systematic looting of Asia by the Japanese forces during World War II. And it is estimated from my sources that 85% of the world's gold was in Asia during this time. So the powers that be set about to manufacture a situation, which is war, to steal that gold and then bring it back to under the hands of the powers that be, which then issued the US dollar backed by this tremendous amount of gold. And now that they had the majority of the world's gold, they knew that they could do this.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's the golden rule. Whoever has the gold rules.
Yeah. And the book is Gold Warriors by Peggy and Ryan Seagrave. It's Ryan Seagrave. I can't remember. Yeah, but do check it out. Gold Warriors. I'll put the links on the YouTube description page.
Yeah. So I mean, these are interesting times. I like also the Arab Spring thing.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it, that we're talking on the anniversary of Occupy?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Right now, there are people, in New York, on Wall Street.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, okay. Like the Middle East, I wonder about too, because I think it's possible that we're trying to the Middle East. There's like I don't know. I mean, did you ever listen to like a guy like Lindsey Williams? Well, he's like this Baptist minister who was working on the Alaska pipeline back in the 70s, or as a minister to the guys working on the pipeline, and he supposedly met these big elite guys, oil guys, and they've been telling him stuff, that what to expect, because they basically know they've got the money and power. They're on the inside. They know what the basic agenda is. And I mean, I don't know if it's totally what he's saying is totally true, but it's very interesting because he's just a basic guy. He's not making this stuff up. Somebody's definitely telling it to him. He had a few sources. One of them died like 2 years ago.
Sorry, what was he? What did he discover?
Okay, well, basically, these sources have been telling him over the years what to expect. And basically, there's a hell of a lot of oil up in Alaska, is basically what they tell him. But they're not going to tap into it until they have oil at least $150 a barrel. And to do that, there's a lot of other stuff they want to do. And they want to... one thing that got me impressed about this guy is he totally called the whole Arab Spring thing, all these movements in the Middle East, and he says that this is sort of like provoked. They want this.
Yeah.
The powers want this, and they want this. They want to topple these regimes, and once you see Saudi Arabia go down, then you know that they're close to accomplishing what they want. And so they want to sell the oil. They don't want to rely on the Middle East oil anymore. I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting thing.
No, which brings to mind what's happening now with the anti-Islamic film and all the unrest that's happening. I mean, that's very fishy to me. Very fishy.
Was it just all provoked?
very fishy. The
set
way
up.
it's happening, the
Mhm.
speed in which it's happening,
Yeah, right.
doesn't feel natural to me. Not at all.
It's like, one way we can fix the economic problems is distract everyone with war.
Chaos.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's a big one.
But no matter what happens, I don't know. I mean, who knows? I'm not the global elite, and even if they do have an agenda that they're trying to do, there's no. I mean, there's definitely resistance. It's not like they can just totally do this no problem. But if they have the money and the power and they have an agenda, they definitely have a good chance of being successful. But I mean, you got to keep in mind that we have it good in the modern world. This is a world of 7 billion billionaires, basically, relative to like 50, 100 years ago, 100 years ago, especially. We have just stuff that's just completely cheap that we take for granted. Just like the thread count of the shirt I'm wearing is so comfortable. Even the richest kings couldn't afford something this nice, and it only costs, like 10, 15 bucks. Climate control, hot water, fresh water, all these basic things that really don't cost a lot. And we have them. We have it good, even though the world is still screwed up and it's playing out this constant victimizers script. So that's something to always keep in mind.
Yeah, I agree with you. What's most important is to enjoy what we have and to be grateful for what we have, because that's what we can really control. The way we feel about what we have, and we really don't need a lot to be happy, do we?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, I live a pretty minimal life. If anyone ever put me under the microscope, and that's the way I like it. I mean, I feel safer with a minimalist life.
Yeah,
is you're not invested in all these things. You're not relying on things being a certain way that you can't control.
Mm.
You're not setting yourself up to be a victim.
Yeah. Cool, Alex. We're just gonna wrap this up now. I think we've got a good amount of material.
Like an hour.
About an hour. Any last things you'd like to say? When is your next thing gonna come out?
Okay. I wouldn't hold your breath for 2013, but I definitely want in 2014 to have some books out, maybe more than one.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe by the end of 2013, I might be able to get something out. But since I've been working on multiple things at once, getting one thing done has not been, something that's been happening lately.
Yeah.
And also, I'm going to put on my website, anybody who's interested in buying art, paintings, the information on that. So, I mean, that's all I have to really say.
Cool. Thanks, Alex. Yeah. Always a pleasure to speak to you.
Yeah, and I've wanted to have this kind of a good economic conversation.
I think we should do this more often and probably get more people involved. I think it's good to bring it back to the world. I think it's very essential, because ACIM is very much theoretical, and a lot of teachers, stick to the theoretical bit because they can't go wrong.
And people
cannot do any wrong.
Yeah.
But we need that practical to ground us.
And people are interested in the worldly stuff, like the story of when Gary Renard went on Coast to Coast AM, and they wanted to talk about the aliens and the future predictions and stuff like that, and not the core concepts of the course. People are more interested when you talk about this more sensational stuff and bring it back around to.
Yeah, I haven't listened to that one. I've got to check that out.
Yeah, that was his big break. I had just gotten interested in A Course in Miracles at that time, and I thought, oh, cool, Gary Renard's going to be on Coast to Coast, and I didn't know what would happen with this, but it turned out to be pretty much his big break. Yeah. Even though the host cut him off early, he kind of yelled at him and said, stop talking about oneness, let's talk about the aliens and stuff.
Which, by the way, is another story, another huge story, which actually links to gold. But I'll talk about it sometime else.
Yeah, we'll
still
do,
developing that. Yeah.
yeah, we'll talk about all these interesting subjects.
Yeah, it's actually something.
Regardless
yeah.
of regardless of how much we can tie them back into A Course in Miracles.
Well, it always ties back, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because
so smarter the more you understand A Course in Miracles, the better you are at tying everything back to it.
yes, because it ultimately we want to get to where the Course is teaching us. That's the whole reason why we're doing anything in the first place.
Yep. We want the truth, and the truth is one. It's not separation. And so all these layers of, digging through all these layers of misinformation up to the truth.
Yeah. And the information sifting is something that actually, you and I are both, in a sense, well equipped to do. And I don't think I'm blowing my own horn here. That, we've done a lot of digging, a lot of sifting, and what we are doing is presenting what we've learned along the way and just highlighting those things which we think are important. And actually that's very necessary. It's a bit like being a pathfinder. In the jungle, you're clearing the way for people to come in.
Yep.
Cool. Thanks, Alex. We'll speak again soon.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay.
It was great.
Ciao. Bye for now.